I inherited Uncle's business, but my family sold it. They had no idea he left me the real fortune. The day Uncle Raymond died was the day I realized how quickly family ties could unravel. Rain pelted the windows of his workshop as I sat alone among his creations, handcrafted chairs with intricate carvings, tables polished to perfection. Everything smelled of sawdust and varnish, that familiar scent that always clung to Uncle Raymond's clothes. My name is Alex Chen, and at 32, I never expected to inherit anything, let alone a business. I'd spent the past decade working as a marketing consultant while my parents chased money and status. Uncle Raymond had been my sanctuary growing up, the one who taught me to appreciate craftsmanship. Mr. Chen? A voice interrupted my thoughts. Mr. Winters, Uncle Raymond's lawyer, stood in the doorway with his leather briefcase. I'm sorry to disturb your moment of reflection, but there are some matters we need to discuss. I nodded, gesturing to the worn leather couch where Uncle Raymond used to sketch his designs. As I mentioned on the phone, your uncle's will is quite specific. The business, Raymond's Custom Furnishings, along with this workshop and all equipment, has been left to you, exclusively to you. But I don't know the first thing about making furniture, I said, running my fingers along the grain of a half-finished table. Mr. Winters smiled gently. Raymond was well aware of that. He mentioned that you have an eye for beauty and a head for business, a combination he believed would serve the company well. I was about to respond when the workshop door banged open, and my family burst in like a storm front. My father, Richard, led the charge in his expensive suit. Behind him came my mother, Eleanor, her face a mask of controlled fury. My older brother Michael and younger sister Jennifer flanked them, looking like they'd been summoned for an ambush. There you are, my father boomed. We've been looking everywhere for you. Yes, about that. My mother cut in, her voice sharp as a freshly honed chisel. There seems to be some mistake. Raymond couldn't possibly have intended to leave everything to Alex. There's no mistake, Mr. Winters replied calmly. The will is quite clear. My father's face darkened. This is absurd. Raymond and I were brothers. This business was built with family money I lent him 25 years ago. A loan that was repaid in full within 3 years, according to Raymond's records, Mr. Winters countered. For the next hour, I watched in stunned silence as my family tried every angle to challenge the will. My brother Michael, an accountant, demanded to see financial records. My sister Jennifer, who had gone to law school but never practiced, threw around legal terms she barely understood. When they realized the legal battle was lost before it began, their tactics shifted. Alex, sweetie, my mother said, her voice suddenly soft. You don't want this burden. You've never shown any interest in furniture making or running a business like this. That's not true, I said quietly. I used to spend every summer here with Uncle Raymond. You were just never interested in what I was doing. His legacy? Jennifer scoffed. It's a furniture shop, not the Sistine Chapel. Be practical. Michael pulled out his phone. I've already consulted with a business broker. Based on the company's annual revenue, we could get about $2.3 million. Split 4 ways. Split 4 ways. I interrupted, anger finally breaking through. Uncle Raymond left the business to me, not to all of you. Don't be selfish, my father snapped. You're a part of this family, despite how little you act like it sometimes. Over the next few weeks, their campaign intensified. My mother called daily, her voice alternating between saccharine concern and ice-cold disappointment. My father sent business articles about failed small businesses. Michael bombarded me with spreadsheets showing how quickly I could burn through capital. Jennifer left voicemails about my fiduciary responsibility to the family. At work, I couldn't focus. At home, I couldn't sleep. The pressure was constant, grinding me down. Then came the legal threats, hints that they might contest the will on grounds of undue influence. Claims about my mental state, my business inexperience, even suggestions that I had somehow manipulated Uncle Raymond during his final illness. The last straw came when I arrived at the workshop one morning to find my father and brother in Raymond's office, with 2 men in expensive suits. Perfect timing, my father said. These gentlemen are from Lux Furnishings Corporation. They're interested in acquiring Raymond's business. You have no right, I began, but my voice shook. Actually, one of the suited men said, sliding a document across the desk, your family has provided evidence that decisions about this business are to be made collectively, pending final resolution of certain legal matters. I looked down at the paper, a temporary injunction that my family had somehow obtained, freezing any major business decisions until their challenge to the will could be heard. In that moment, staring at their victorious faces, I felt something inside me crack. Maybe they were right. Maybe I couldn't do this. 2 days later, I signed the papers. Lux Furnishings Corporation acquired Raymond's Custom Furnishings for $2.4 million. My family celebrated at my father's country club that night. I wasn't invited, but I heard all about it from Jennifer's Instagram stories, champagne toasts, my mother's speech about keeping Raymond's memory alive, my father shaking hands with Michael as if congratulating him on a game well played. What they didn't see was the small smile on my face as I sat alone in Uncle Raymond's workshop one last time, reading through his actual will, all 67 pages of it, and finding the clause that Mr. Winters had quietly pointed out to me the day after I signed the sale papers. Uncle Raymond had indeed been 10 steps ahead of everyone, and my family had just walked right into his final masterpiece of craftsmanship, a trap built not of wood, but of their own greed. 3 days after the sale of Raymond's Custom Furnishings, Mr. Winters called me for a private meeting at his downtown office. The space was nothing like I expected. Instead of mahogany and leather, his office was bright and modern, with handcrafted furniture that I instantly recognized as Uncle Raymond's work. Please sit, he said, gesturing to a chair I remembered watching Uncle Raymond design 5 years ago. I believe now is the appropriate time to discuss the secondary aspects of your uncle's will. I'd been carrying around a strange calmness since the sale, much to the confusion of my family, who expected tears or rage. They didn't understand that Uncle Raymond had prepared me years ago for how they might behave. Alex, he told me during one of our last visits, his hands weakened by illness, but still moving methodically over a piece of walnut. People show their true nature when they think they're winning. Remember that. Mr. Winters slid a thick folder across his desk. This contains the full details of the Raymond Chun Living Trust, which remained dormant until triggered by specific conditions. The sale of the business, I said, pieces finally clicking into place. He nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of his mouth. Your uncle was uniquely pragmatic about human nature. He told me, my brother's family will do exactly what I expect them to do. And they did. Opening the folder, he pointed to a highlighted paragraph in legal language so dense it almost seemed designed to be overlooked. But there, buried in subparagraph 17.3, was the clause that changed everything. Should the primary business asset, Raymond's Custom Furnishings, be sold, transferred, or otherwise disposed of without maintaining the recipient's controlling interest, all remaining liquid assets, investment portfolios, real estate holdings, and intellectual property rights shall immediately and irrevocably transfer in their entirety to the named primary heir, Alexandra Chen, bypassing all secondary beneficiaries listed in Schedule B. I read it 3 times before looking up. What exactly does this mean? In plain English? Mr. Winters leaned back. It means, Miss Chen, that when your family forced the sale of the furniture business, they inadvertently activated your uncle's real legacy. The business was valuable, yes, but it was merely the visible tip of a very large iceberg. He pulled up a secure portal on his computer and turned the screen toward me. I saw account after account, property listings, investment portfolios, all with staggering numbers attached. Your uncle lived modestly, but he invested brilliantly. The furniture business was his passion, but not his only source of income. He holds patents on several woodworking tools, made early investments in sustainable forestry that paid off exponentially, and quietly acquired prime real estate near every major furniture market in the country. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the assets. This can't be right. These numbers, $27.4 million to be precise, Mr. Winters said. All of which, As of the moment your signature hit, that sale document belongs exclusively to you. The room seemed to tilt. Uncle Raymond, who wore the same worn flannel shirts until they fell apart, who drove a 15-year-old truck, who lived above his workshop in a simple apartment, had been quietly amassing a fortune all along. "There's more," Mr. Winters continued, bringing me back to reality. "Your uncle was particularly meticulous about the intellectual property aspects. The designs, techniques, and brand of Raymond's custom furnishings remain yours, despite the sale of the physical business. So Lux Furnishings bought the equipment, inventory, and the right to operate under that name for exactly 5 years," he finished. "After which, should you wish, you could re-establish the business with all of Raymond's proprietary designs intact." I laughed incredulously. He thought of everything. Almost. Mr. Winters' expression turned serious. "There is one final aspect to address. Your uncle included a letter to be given to you at this juncture." He handed me a sealed envelope, the paper thick and cream-colored, with my name written in Uncle Raymond's distinctive, precise handwriting. With shaking hands, I broke the seal and unfolded the letter. "My dear Alex, if you're reading this, then events have unfolded as I anticipated. I'm sorry for making you the target of their greed, but it was the only way to reveal their true characters while simultaneously ensuring your future security. The business was always meant for you, but I knew Richard and Eleanor wouldn't accept that. Their obsession with money has defined them for as long as I've known them. They've never understood that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in purpose and integrity. The fortune I've left you wasn't accumulated for its own sake. Each investment, each property, each patent was acquired with purpose, to build something lasting, something that could do good in the world long after I'm gone. I ask only 3 things of you. First, live authentically. Never let others dictate your worth or your path. Second, use this wealth wisely. Not just for yourself, but for others. There's a reason the Raymond Chin Foundation is listed among the assets you now control. Third, when your family inevitably discovers what's happened, remember that mercy can be more powerful than retribution. Their punishment will be living with the consequences of their own actions. You've always seen value where others saw only wood. Now, it's your turn to build something beautiful. With all my love and faith in you, Uncle Raymond." Tears blurred my vision as I reached the end of the letter. Uncle Raymond hadn't just left me money, he'd left me purpose, clarity, and freedom. "What happens now?" I asked quietly. Mr. Winters closed the folder. "Now, Ms. Chun, you begin transferring these assets into your name. The process is already underway, but will take approximately 1 week to complete. After that, well..." He smiled. "After that, you decide." As I left his office, clutching the folder that contained my new reality, I thought about my family celebrating their victory over me. They had no idea what was coming. The sale had been finalized yesterday, which meant the trust had already activated. In 1 week's time, I would go from being the family disappointment to becoming several times wealthier than all of them combined. And they had done it to themselves. I pulled out my phone and saw 3 missed calls from my mother. No doubt she was calling to discuss my fair share of the sale proceeds. I put the phone back in my pocket without returning the call. Let them enjoy their victory lap. Uncle Raymond's true legacy was about to blindside them all. The Chin family victory party was in full swing at the Grand Meridian Hotel's penthouse suite when I reluctantly arrived. Crystal chandeliers cast golden light over a room filled with people I barely recognized, my parents' social circle, business associates, and distant relatives who had never bothered with Uncle Raymond when he was alive. "There's our little furniture maker," my father announced as I stepped through the doorway. A few guests chuckled, champagne glasses glinting. He was already 3 drinks in, his face flushed with alcohol and triumph. Come in. We saved you some cake at least." I forced a smile, playing the role of the defeated family member. "How generous." My mother glided over, draped in a new designer dress with a price tag that would have made Uncle Raymond wince. "Darling, we were beginning to think you wouldn't show. Sulking doesn't become you." She air-kissed my cheek, her expensive perfume almost suffocating. "Wouldn't miss it. I replied, keeping my tone deliberately flat. What exactly are we celebrating? Financial savvy. Michael called from across the room, raising his glass. My brother had already replaced his sensible sedan with a sports car. I'd seen it parked ostentatiously in the hotel's restricted zone downstairs, turning a dusty old furniture shop into real money. Jennifer sidled up, smartphone in hand. Smile for the gram, she commanded, pulling me close before I could protest. Caption: Family Financial Summit successful. Sorry, Uncle R, but times change. She showed me the screen, her manicured nail tapping where the likes were already accumulating. I felt my stomach turn but kept my expression neutral. So, I assume the money's been distributed already? My father clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. The funds clear tomorrow, minus some administrative costs. Administrative costs? Legal fees, broker commission, the expense of this little celebration, my mother explained dismissively. Oh, and of course your father's management fee. Management fee? I echoed. For handling the sale negotiations, she said, as if it were obvious. 15% is standard in business transitions. I did the mental math. They'd skimmed nearly $400,000 off the top before any distribution. And my share? I asked, already knowing the answer. My parents exchanged a look that confirmed everything. Well, my father cleared his throat. Given that you were rather difficult during the process, and considering the legal expenses incurred due to your initial resistance, we've decided your share should reflect your contribution. My mother finished smoothly. You'll receive a stipend of $5,000 monthly for 2 years. We feel that's more than generous. Less than 5% of the total. They were cutting me out entirely while pretending to be benefactors. I see, I said quietly. Don't look so glum. Jennifer laughed, throwing an arm around me. We're booking a family cruise to the Mediterranean next month. Your tickets included our treat. And I've got something special planned, Michael added, his words slightly slurred. I'm opening Chin Investment Group. Put down a deposit on office space in the financial district yesterday. I watched as they continued their victory dance, boasting about plans for the windfall. My mother had already redecorated their house. Nothing dramatic, just $250,000 refresh. My father had initiated talks to join an exclusive golf club that had rejected him 3 times before. Jennifer was planning a destination wedding to her boyfriend of 4 months. Michael had placed deposits on both a vacation home and a boat. Excuse me, I murmured, slipping away to the balcony for fresh air. Below, the city twinkled, oblivious to the farce playing out above. I checked my phone. A text from Mr. Winters had arrived. Asset transfer proceeding smoothly. Meeting still scheduled for Thursday. I typed back a quick confirmation, then took a deep breath before returning to the party. For the next 2 hours, I played my part perfectly, the sad, defeated relative, occasionally making failed attempts at happiness that only highlighted my supposed misery. I let Michael mansplain investment strategies to me. I endured Jennifer's condescending career advice. I accepted my mother's backhanded reassurances that some people simply aren't cut out for business. As the evening wound down, my father clinked his glass for attention. I'd like to propose a toast, he announced, swaying slightly. To family wisdom and unity. Some of you know we faced a small disagreement about Raymond's intentions. Several guests chuckled knowingly. But in the end, logic prevailed over sentiment. Glasses raised around the room. And to Alex, he added, with a magnanimous gesture in my direction, who ultimately recognized that Raymond's legacy is better honored through family prosperity than through stubborn attachment to a failing business model. To Alex, the crowd echoed. My mother stepped forward, suddenly emotional in a way that seemed rehearsed. Raymond always said the family name would endure through wise decisions, she declared. Tonight, we honor his memory by securing the Chun family future. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Uncle Raymond had never said anything of the sort. As guests began departing, I overheard snatches of my parents' conversations with their friends. Commitments to investment partnerships. Promises of vacation home timeshares. plans for lavish joint ventures. They were spending money they didn't yet have, making promises based on anticipated wealth. Jennifer cornered me near the door. "We're thinking of buying the lot next to Uncle Raymond's workshop," she said, scrolling through property listings. "Tear down that eyesore and build something worthwhile. Maybe luxury condos? Michael says the zoning can be changed with the right connections." "That's Uncle Raymond's legacy you're talking about erasing," I said, unable to hide my disgust. She rolled her eyes. "His legacy is the money, Alex. The rest is just stuff. Get over it." Before I could respond, my mother swept over. "Alex, darling, we've scheduled a family financial planning session next Friday. Do try to attend with a more cooperative attitude." She pressed a check into my hand. "Your first month's stipend. Don't spend it all at once." I looked down at the check for $5,000, a patronizing fraction of what should have been mine. "Thanks, Mom," I said, pocketing it. "I'll be sure to invest it wisely. Uncle Raymond taught me a thing or two about long-term planning." "Oh, sweetheart," she laughed lightly, patting my cheek. "Leave the financial strategy to your father and brother. You just focus on finding a new job now that your furniture phase is over." As I walked out of the hotel that night, I heard my father loudly proclaiming to remaining guests, "We've finally secured the Chin family fortune." Raymond would be proud. If only they knew what was coming on Thursday. Thursday morning arrived with a perfectly timed thunderstorm, matching the dramatic shift about to occur in the Chin family dynamics. I sat in Mr. Winter's office, watching raindrops race down the windows as his assistant brought in a sealed envelope bearing the insignia of Winters, Calderon and Associates. "The official trust activation letter," Mr. Winters announced, sliding the envelope across his desk. "Once you sign the enclosed documents, you'll have full access to all 27 accounts, the real estate holdings, and the Raymond Chin Foundation's assets." My hands trembled slightly as I broke the seal. Inside was a document that would forever change my life, official confirmation that Uncle Raymond's hidden fortune was now entirely mine. "Before you sign," Mr. Winters said, his expression serious, "there's something else you should know." He opened his laptop and turned it toward me. "I've been monitoring the business transition, and it appears your family has already encountered some complications." The screen showed a series of legal notices. I skimmed through them, my eyes widening. "Lux Furnishings is alleging fraud?" I asked. Mr. Winters nodded. "Your father made several misrepresentations during the sale negotiations. He claimed certain high-value client contracts were included, but Uncle Raymond had separate personal service agreements with those clients that weren't transferable with the business. And they're withholding final payment," I noted, reading further. "Indeed. Additionally, your brother Michael apparently listed himself as CFO of Raymond's Custom Furnishings on the sale documents, a position he never held. That's constituted as securities fraud." I sat back, stunned. They've managed to sabotage themselves in record time. "There's more," Mr. Winters continued. "The IRS has flagged the transaction based on discrepancies in reported business value versus sale price. Your parents appear to have been significantly underpaying taxes on the business for years, claiming it was barely profitable when selling it as highly valuable. Let me guess, Uncle Raymond kept immaculate records that prove otherwise?" Mr. Winters allowed himself a small smile. "Raymond documented everything. The tax liability alone could exceed $1 million with penalties." I signed the trust activation documents, feeling a strange calm descend. "What happens now?" "Now," Mr. Winters said, "you become one of my wealthiest clients, and your family discovers they've made a catastrophic mistake." As if on cue, my phone began vibrating with incoming calls from both my parents. I silenced it and slipped it back into my pocket. "Let them wait," I said. "I have some arrangements to make first." Over the next few hours, Mr. Winters and his team guided me through the initial steps of managing my newfound wealth. By lunchtime, I had established access to accounts totaling over $27 million, reviewed the property portfolio worth another $12 million, and been introduced to the directors of the Raymond Chin Foundation, which supported sustainable forestry and traditional craftsmanship education programs. My phone continued buzzing periodically, but I ignored it until late afternoon, when a text from Jennifer finally caught my attention. Dad and Michael in huge trouble. Emergency family meeting tonight. Be there. 7 p.m. When I arrived at my parents' house that evening, the atmosphere was drastically different from the celebration earlier that week. My father paced the living room, tie loosened and hair disheveled. My mother sat rigid on the sofa, eyes red-rimmed. Michael hunched over his laptop at the dining table, frantically typing. Jennifer stood by the window, chewing her nails, a habit she'd supposedly broken years ago. What happened? I asked innocently, setting my bag down. What happened? My father exploded. Everything's falling apart. The damn vultures at Lux are backing out of the deal. Not backing out, Michael corrected without looking up. Withholding 40% of payment pending investigation of alleged misrepresentations. Which is ridiculous, my father continued. So, what if I enhance certain aspects of the business? That's just good salesmanship. My mother shot him a warning look. Richard, please. And now, Michael added miserably, the bank has frozen the partial payment we did receive. Why? I asked, though I already knew. Some nonsense about the IRS placing a lien on the funds, my father muttered. Bureaucratic harassment, that's all it is. Jennifer spun from the window. It's more than harassment. We're looking at potential fraud charges, Alex. And that's not even the worst part. What could be worse? I asked. We've already spent nearly $600,000, my mother admitted quietly. The party, the deposits on properties and vehicles, the new house renovations. Not to mention my new office lease, Michael groaned. And the investors I've already collected funds from. You've been taking investments already? I couldn't hide my shock. Without any licenses or registrations? I was going to handle all that after we received the full payment, he snapped defensively. I shook my head, genuinely appalled. So you're facing IRS troubles, fraud allegations, potential securities violations, and you've already spent money you don't have? We wouldn't be in this mess if you'd just cooperated from the beginning, my father shouted, his face reddening. If you hadn't been so difficult, we could have handled the sale properly. And now we need your help, my mother interjected, her voice suddenly gentle. Family sticks together in a crisis, Alex. I raised an eyebrow. My help? What could I possibly do? Your stipend, Jennifer said. We need you to sign it back to us. It's only fair. This mess affects all of us. I almost laughed. You want me to give you back the tiny fraction you so generously offered me? It's $20,000 per year, my father protested. That's hardly insignificant. Compared to the millions you kept for yourselves? I challenged. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. There's something else, Michael finally said, looking up from his computer with panic in his eyes. I just got an email from a law firm representing the Raymond Chin Trust. They're claiming ownership of all intellectual property associated with Raymond's custom furnishings, effective immediately. My father snatched the laptop, reading frantically. This can't be real. We sold everything. Apparently not, Michael whispered. According to this, we only sold physical assets and a 5-year licensing agreement for the name. My mother turned to me, suspicion dawning in her eyes. Did you know about this? Is that why you weren't fighting harder? Before I could answer, my father's phone rang. His face paled as he listened to the caller. What do you mean denied? He spluttered. The membership was confirmed yesterday. He hung up, looking shell-shocked. The golf club, they've rescinded my membership application. Apparently, someone informed them of our ongoing legal and financial issues. All eyes turned to me. What did you do? Jennifer demanded. I simply smiled, reached into my bag, and pulled out the trust activation letter. I didn't do anything, I replied calmly. Uncle Raymond did. The Chin family living room froze in absolute silence as I placed the trust activation letter on the coffee table. Curiosity drew them in like moths to flame, 4 sets of eyes fixed on the document bearing the embossed seal of Uncle Raymond's estate. What is this? My father asked, voice suddenly hoarse as he reached for the letter. I slid it toward him with one finger. Read it. His lips moved silently as he scanned the document, face draining of color with each line. When he reached the amount, $27.4 million plus real estate holdings valued at $12 million, the paper trembled in his hands. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Is it?" I asked, leaning back with newfound confidence. "Uncle Raymond always said you never bothered to truly know him. You saw a simple furniture maker, because that's all you wanted to see." My mother snatched the letter from my father's limp fingers, her designer reading glasses perched on her nose. Her usual composure crumbled as she read, mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "The Raymond Shin Living Trust?" she finally managed. "Activated upon sale of the business?" "Clause 17.3. I confirmed, relishing each word. The one you would have known about if you'd bothered to read the entire will instead of focusing on the parts you thought benefited you. Michael grabbed the letter next, scanning it with the desperation of a drowning man. "This says all assets transfer to you automatically, bypassing all secondary beneficiaries." "That would be all of you," I clarified unnecessarily. Jennifer, last to read, sank onto the sofa. $27 million, she repeated, voice hollow. Uncle Raymond had $27 million. Plus the real estate, I reminded her. "Don't forget the $12 million in property assets." I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the neighborhood my parents had stretched their finances to afford, the neighborhood they'd always reminded me I couldn't possibly live in on my modest income. "It's almost poetic," I continued. "The moment you forced the sale of the business, the very second you thought you'd won, you triggered Uncle Raymond's real legacy." "You knew," my father accused, finding his voice again. "You knew all along and let us make this mistake." I turned to face him. "I didn't know until after you forced the sale. Uncle Raymond may have prepared me for your greed, but even he didn't trust me with the full details while the business was still in play." "But that means—" My mother's voice trailed off as the implications dawned on her. "Yes," I confirmed. "I now control assets worth nearly $40 million. Meanwhile, you're facing fraud allegations, tax investigations, and you've already spent money you don't actually have." Michael ran his hands through his hair, calculations visibly racing behind his eyes. "We can fix this. We're family. Obviously, you'll help us out of this situation." The audacity nearly made me laugh. "Will I?" "Of course you will," my mother insisted, switching instantly to her nurturing voice. "Families support each other, darling." "Like you supported me?" I asked. "When you manipulated me, threatened me with legal action, and then gave me a pittance of what you thought was my inheritance." "That was different," my father blustered. "We were acting in everyone's best interest." "No," I corrected him. "You are acting in your own interests as you always have." I moved to the center of the room, commanding their attention in a way they'd never allowed before. "Let me be perfectly clear about what happens next," I continued. "First, I won't be signing over my stipend. In fact, effective immediately, that arrangement is terminated." "You can't," Jennifer began. "I can and I am." I cut her off. "Second, the Raymond Shin Foundation will be pursuing full legal remedies regarding the intellectual property infringement. Lux Furnishings will be informed that they purchased assets under fraudulent conditions." My father paled further. "You'd side with strangers against your own family?" "I'm siding with Uncle Raymond's legacy," I countered. "The legacy you tried to erase." I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app, making a show of scrolling through the newly accessible accounts. "What are you doing?" Michael asked nervously. "Checking my balances," I replied casually. "Just confirming that all the transfers completed correctly." "It seems they have." I turned the screen toward them, displaying a balance that exceeded anything they had ever possessed. Their expressions were priceless, a mixture of shock, envy, and dawning horror at what they had lost. "You need to help us," my mother said, voice cracking. "We'll lose everything." "Perhaps," I acknowledged. "But that's the consequence of your choices, not mine." My father, desperate now, switched tactics. "Raymond would want you to share this with the family. He wouldn't want us to suffer." The invocation of Uncle Raymond's name from my father's lips ignited something inside me. I closed the distance between us until we were eye to eye. "Don't you dare presume to know what Uncle Raymond would want," I said, voice dangerously quiet. "You ignored him when he was alive. You dismissed his work as insignificant. You tried to erase his legacy the moment you thought you could profit from it." I stepped back, addressing them all. "Uncle Raymond knew exactly what he was doing. He gave you precisely what you deserved." Jennifer started to cry, mascara trailing down her cheeks. "So that's it? You're just going to watch us lose everything? Like you watched me lose the business I inherited?" I challenged. "Yes, I think I will." My mother made one last attempt, her voice honey-sweet despite her trembling hands. "Darling, surely we can discuss this reasonably. Perhaps a small loan to tide us over?" I pretended to consider this, watching hope flicker across their faces before I extinguished it. "No," I said simply. "I don't think so." I gathered my belongings and headed for the door, pausing with my hand on the knob. "Uncle Raymond left me a letter with the trust documents," I told them. "He said I should remember that mercy can sometimes be more powerful than retribution." I've been thinking about that a lot. They leaned forward, desperate for any hint of clemency. "The thing is," I continued, "watching you face the consequences of your own actions? That feels like mercy to me. Mercy toward Uncle Raymond's memory." I opened the door, savoring my parting words. "You didn't win," I said, smiling for the first time in their presence. Uncle Raymond made sure of that. Their stunned silence followed me out into the night, sweeter than any apology could ever be. 1 year passed like the turning of a well-crafted wooden wheel, smooth, inevitable, and exactly as designed by Uncle Raymond's masterful hand. I stood at the window of my new office, watching autumn leaves dance across the courtyard of what was once again Raymond's custom furnishings. The 5-year licensing agreement with Lux had been terminated early after my legal team proved my family's fraud. With the intellectual property rights already mined through the trust, I'd purchased back the physical assets at a fraction of what my family had sold them for. The workshop hummed with activity below. The 3 senior craftsmen Uncle Raymond had trained were back, now joined by 6 apprentices from the Foundation's educational program. The business wasn't just restored. It was thriving in ways my family had never imagined possible. My phone buzzed with a text from Mr. Winters. "Thought you'd want to know. Foreclosure on your parents' house finalized today." I set down the phone without replying. The news wasn't surprising, but it didn't bring the satisfaction I'd once expected. After the initial confrontation, I'd watched my family's downfall from a distance, neither helping nor hindering as their world collapsed under the weight of their own decisions. My father was the first to fall. The fraud allegations from Lux Furnishings had triggered an SEC investigation into his other business dealings, revealing a pattern of misrepresentations stretching back decades. His real estate license was revoked, and he now faced potential criminal charges. Michael's amateur attempt at running an investment firm had imploded spectacularly when his initial investors demanded their money back. Unable to return funds he'd already spent, he'd been sued by former friends and colleagues. Last I heard, he was working as a junior accountant at a small firm in another state, his reputation in financial circles destroyed. Jennifer's lavish wedding plans had evaporated when her fiancé discovered there would be no family money to fund their lifestyle. He'd broken off the engagement publicly and humiliatingly. She'd been forced to move back in with our parents, just as their financial house of cards was collapsing. My mother had perhaps fallen furthest. Her social standing, the thing she valued above all else, had crumbled as fair-weather friends distanced themselves from the family's disgrace. Her designer clothes and jewelry had been sold piece by piece to cover mounting bills. A knock at my office door interrupted my thoughts. "Come in," I called. Gabriella, the Foundation's director, entered with a tablet in hand. "I have the quarterly reports ready for your review, and there's something else you should see." She handed me the tablet, opened to an email with a subject line, "Request for financial assistance, Eleanor Chin." My mother had finally swallowed her pride enough to approach the Raymond Chin Foundation directly, not knowing I oversaw it. Her carefully worded request described unexpected hardships and temporary financial setbacks. She asked for help with basic living expenses while they reorganized their assets. "What would you like me to do with this?" Gabriella asked. I stared at my mother's desperate words, remembering Uncle Raymond's letter about mercy. I'd carried his advice with me through every decision this past year. "Process it like any other application," I finally said. "No special treatment either way." Gabriella nodded and left, closing the door softly behind her. I returned to the window, this time looking beyond the courtyard to the building taking shape on the adjacent lot, the Raymond Chin School of Traditional Craftsmanship. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was the very property Jennifer had wanted to develop into luxury condos. My phone rang, a number I recognized but hadn't answered in months. "Hello, Dad," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Alex." His voice was smaller than I remembered, stripped of its former confidence. "I know I'm the last person you want to hear from. What do you need?" I asked directly. A heavy pause followed. "We're being evicted next week. Your mother doesn't know I'm calling. We have nowhere to go." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of his desperation. "And you want money?" "I want a chance," he corrected me. "Any kind of work. I could even help at the workshop. Raymond taught me some basics when we were young, before you decided it was beneath you," I finished. "Yes," he admitted quietly. I was wrong about many things. I thought about Uncle Raymond's workshop the day after he died, how I'd sat alone among his creations, overwhelmed by the legacy he'd entrusted to me. I'd felt unqualified then, just as my father must feel now. "Come to the workshop tomorrow morning," I said. 7 a.m. "I can't promise anything beyond a conversation." "Thank you," he whispered before hanging up. Over the following months, each member of my family approached me separately, pride replaced by necessity. Michael asked for help rebuilding his credit and finding stable employment. Jennifer inquired about administrative positions at the foundation. My mother, after her assistance application was denied, finally came in person to apologize, or at least her version of an apology. To each, I offered the same thing: opportunity, not handouts. My father began as a workshop assistant, sweeping floors and preparing materials. Michael's accounting skills were put to use auditing foundation grants. Jennifer started answering phones at the school. My mother, perhaps making the biggest adjustment, took a position cataloging historical furniture techniques in the archives. None received special treatment. None were given money directly. All had to earn back trust one day at a time, working alongside people who valued craftsmanship over status. 6 months into this new arrangement, I found my father staying late at the workshop, painstakingly sanding a small jewelry box. "What's this?" I asked, running my hand over the smooth cherry wood. "A reminder," he said without looking up. "Raymond made one like this for our mother when we were boys. I used to watch him work and think he was wasting his time." He set down the sandpaper. "I was wrong about so many things, Alex." I nodded, not offering forgiveness, but acknowledging his effort. Uncle Raymond used to say that working with wood teaches patience. The piece reveals itself slowly, and you can't rush the process. He was right, my father admitted, about everything. As I walked away, I spotted a framed quote on the workshop wall, words Uncle Raymond had shared with me often. "Greed blinds the foolish, but patience rewards the wise." In the end, I had won everything. Not just the fortune, but the wisdom to use it well. And perhaps, in time, I might even rebuild something my family had never truly had, a foundation built on respect rather than obligation. Uncle Raymond would have called that the greatest craftsmanship of all.